Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending upon where you are joining us. We are so glad you are here, and thank you very much for your time. And I know you have a busy day and you choose to join this webinar. I really hope you're gonna learn a lot from our distinguished speakers, and we can help you in your quantum entrepreneurship, hopefully to happen journey. I'm Reza. I'm my tax senior advisor in quantum science and technology. I have the honor to be your host today, and also I will deliver the MyTax presentation since our CEO, Dr. John Hepburn, who usually does this, is very busy today, and he was not able to join us. We have outstanding speakers that soon you're going to hear from them. Jake and Chloe from Creative Destruction Lab and District Q in Ontario and in Quebec. We are so fortunate to have them today on board with us. We do have a few questions just to begin this session with and learn more about you, your interests, where are you joining us. So, and those questions are going to be on Slido. Kim will help me. There it is. Here's the link to Slido. If you could join there and answer those questions, that would be wonderful. And we get to know you more, and hopefully we can organize better events that's suitable for your background and your plans when it comes to quantum entrepreneurship. Now I'm going to do that myself. And then we're going to wait a few moments to see the results. Fantastic. Canada, Toronto, India, Vancouver. That's great. New York, Montreal. Waterloo, of course. I see Waterloo is kind of winning now. Also, Calgary, Toronto, and Montreal. Wonderful. Okay, thank you very much, guys. This is amazing. I see we have audience and attendees from all around the world, even from Shiraz. I think we are moving to the next question. What are the key elements of quantum entrepreneurship that you think is, the most important elements? Impacts, knowledge, greed, of course. Adaptability, for sure. Proof of concept. Okay. That's always good to have. Leadership. And talent. Practicality, vision. Of course, a visionary CEO, founder is always important to have on board. Innovation, having an industrial mindset. Training professionals, technology, okay.
If I may, Reza, I think that's very interesting because it just shows that there's no secret sauce, right? It's a combination of so many different skills. It's not like you need only one or two things.
Absolutely, absolutely. There are so many elements that, the more we have those elements, I think better chance of success, right? So knowing the market, I think it's kind of winning on my screen, knowing market need, talent, innovation. Wonderful answers are still coming, I think. Big money, that helps, but that usually doesn't happen. It's a very early stage of especially quantum startups. Commercialization, that's what we are trying to do. Big money. Critical thinking, market vision, knowledge, scalability. I like those. I like them very much. And exactly as Chloe said, there is no secret sauce. There's so many elements. Feasibility. Diversity. That's an important one for sure. Okay, this is great. Perhaps we can move on to the next question. We record all these answers and we keep them, and we will share those with all of you, what you're thinking after this event. What do you think? Oh, the answers are still coming. Okay. Perseverance, self-confidence. Okay. Compassion, perhaps, for the team. That's important. All right, great. Yeah, that's our next question. Characteristics of a successful founder. Vision seems to be a big one. What do you think, Jake, in all the startups you have seen, all the founders?
Yeah, I think I actually threw it in there, coachability. It's something that comes up more often than you think. The ability for the founder to take feedback from mentors, from those around them, rather than maybe what they may assume to be the way to do things, is something that I've seen as a very, very powerful trend, right? Very hard to know what exactly the customer versus the investor versus the scientist are all going to think is the best way. So to be able to integrate all those perspectives into the vision, I think very, very important trait.
I think one that I don't see there, and it goes along the same lines, is humility. because self-confidence is important, and it was one of the first that came up. But being humble enough to know when to ask for help and to listen to more experienced people is also very important.
Absolutely. I don't see coachability, Jake, but I'm sure it's somewhere. I like sacrifice. Yes, you're going to sacrifice a lot of late at nights and weekends and everything. Coachability, that's right. Ability to delegate, reception, creativity, courage, luck. Having that helps for sure. Patience, passion, persistence, focus.
So we have a hacker in the room.
This pool is easily hacked. Thank you. Hard work, charisma. I agree with that. Being tough, that's a good one. That's right. Being organized or self-disciplined, that's definitely a very important characteristic of a successful founder. And of course, it's valid for a quantum founder. All right. Well, thank you very much for your contribution, guys. This was great. This was great. Thank you. And now we can start with presentations. Perhaps we can start with Chloe. She's going to introduce herself much better than I can do and tell us about all the great things that are happening on the Quebec side when it comes to quantum science and technology. I know they are opening new centers. I'll let Chloe tell us about all of those. The floor is yours, Chloe.
All right, you can see my slides, correct? So thank you so much, Reza, for this opportunity. Really excited to be here with you today. So maybe just to give you a bit of background, I worked for ACET, ACET, which is a deep tech incubator located in Sherbrooke, Quebec, which has a strong focus on quantum. This is, I guess, probably why Reza decided to invite me. I'm also involved in different initiatives with District, the Quantum Innovation Zone in Sherbrooke. Essentially, just to make it simple, I'm involved in pretty much everything here in Quebec and Sherbrooke that is related to entrepreneurship and quantum, since, well, quantum is my background in training. So I'm going to give you an overview today of what are the resources available to entrepreneurs when it comes to founding quantum startups, focusing on Quebec because that's where I am and that's the part I know best. But of course, if you have questions, if you're located in another province and you have questions, I can probably point you to the right people based on where you are in the country. Right. So when we think of startups, I guess the first resource we think of is incubators that can coach and help startups. In Quebec, there are actually 4 incubators that decided to come together. There are much more than 4 incubators in Quebec, but 4 that decided to form what we call a quantum consortium, essentially that they decided to work all together to unite their resources and their strengths to better serve the quantum community. So those are the 4 incubators you see there: ACET, which is in Sherbrooke, Quantino in Quebec City, Santec in Montreal, and Entrepreneurship U Laval, which is the incubator at the University Laval in Quebec City as well. So what does that mean for startups? Well, all of these incubators, they all offer coaching. This is their bread and butter. We all have different flavors and ways to go about it. But the most interesting part, I think, is that through this consortium, we have decided to put our resources in common such that we have agreements between ourselves that if a company is incubated in one incubator, it can actually benefit from resources at the other incubators if they have specific resources programs for quantum startups. So you get actually the best of both worlds, the best of four different worlds by joining any one of these incubators. And there are also other things we do, organizing events, demo days, meetups, all kinds of events like that. Essentially, being 4 incubators, it actually creates a larger community. So we have more visibility. We can offer more visibility for these events, and we organize international missions. So there were 3 last year that were organized, where we brought quantum startups from Quebec to France, UK, Netherlands, and even Japan. So organizing the whole trip so that they meet the right people and make connections in these countries. I'm going to say a bit more on Asset, since this is where I work, so I can give you a bit more information of how we work at Asset. In terms of coaching, everything is personalized. So we're not an incubator that has a cohort-based program. You come in whenever you want. You're assigned to a coach who evaluates what are your needs, how to best address your needs, and then refers you to the right experts in your network at the right timing to help you bring your business forward. So what we've been developing and keep on developing is a specific quantum stream. So since Asset is based in Sherbrooke, and some of you may know there's a strong quantum hub in Sherbrooke, we've developed expertise in coaching quantum startups. So right now there are about 45 startups incubated at Asset, 8 of which are quantum startups. So we have realized over the years that quantum startups are a bit different. The roadmaps are different from most other tech companies. The go-to-market strategies are different. So we felt like we had really to develop something specific for quantum startups. We hired a specialized quantum coach who has a background in quantum, so can speak your language and understand your difficulties. So that's about the quantum part of it. We have other resources. For example, Asset has its own market intelligence service that does market studies, for example, that can help companies. And we can help you get access to different R&D platforms. And I think that's really the strength of being in a very strong ecosystem in Sherbrooke, so that we have different partners around us. You have the logos there. So for example, C2MI is a microfabrication and packaging facility, industrial grade. 3IT has microfabrication prototyping facilities as well. Pink, CMC have access to quantum computers. So there are different partners in the ecosystem, some of which we have agreements specifically to provide easier access for our startups to these platforms to develop their products or do their R&D. Now I'm going to jump onto a different initiative, one now that is led by District, the Quantum Innovation Zone, which we call a Quantum Studio. So this is something that hasn't launched yet, but should launch in the next month or so roughly. And so you'll hear about it more in the coming months. So it is what we call a startup studio. So I've talked so far about incubators. A startup studio is more of a pre-incubator, in the sense that an incubator usually expects an incorporated company which already has a team in place and a kind of the vision to go forward. Well, the studio is helping you before that. So for example, it could help a PhD student who graduates and has an idea of a company he would like to launch, or even maybe not even an idea, just he feels like he likes the idea of putting up a startup from scratch and being its own boss. So we help these people by making actually it easier for them to launch a company. As that's mean providing resources, either financial, human, and even equipment, to de-risk the technology, de-risk the business model, and turn essentially this initial idea into a real startup that can actually attract customers, raise capital, and so on. So we want to make it as easy as possible for you to launch a company, providing a salary, providing office space, money to work on your technology, and all the coaching and mentoring that goes along with it, and training on the business side, for example, if you don't have experience and entrepreneurship. The next tool that we have in the toolbox, I've talked a lot about how to help companies more on the coaching side. Now, something that's also very important is money. So we realized through the years that it's pretty hard to raise money as a quantum company. Most traditional investors will tell you that they don't know enough about quantum to make an investment, or that they feel like quantum is like science fiction. So me and two other colleagues, partners, have decided to launch a venture capital fund specifically to support quantum startups, only quantum startups at the early stage, because we exactly felt that there was a need there. And how we can help is that so two of us actually have a background in quantum. We understand the technology. We've also worked for quantum startups ourselves, so we understand the game of trying to scale a quantum company. So we can help the founders. And most importantly, as I mentioned before, some more traditional investors are not very comfortable in quantum. Well, that's where we come in, and we can actually talk to those investors and explain to them in layman's terms what the technology is and why it is worth making an investment in that space. So we can help you further get financing. So I've talked about money, I've talked about coaching. Now, what about infrastructure? That's also where a district comes into the game. So we're working very hard on a project called Espace Quantique 1, which is a building that we've turned down and are completely renovating to create a space where all the quantum companies can be co-located. So it's a space, I said, to work, play, live. So have your office, but also have events and mingle with other quantum founders, because mainly it's a community of entrepreneurs. What's important is not about the walls, but it's mostly about the people that you'll meet there. Inside the building, there's also a shared industrial quantum lab. So the type of lab that you would typically find in a university, but we're making it available specifically for startups and SMEs. And there will be dilution refrigerators, control electronics, optics, prototyping equipment, testing, characterization, essentially everything that you need to move towards, whether it be a proof of concept or an MVP, for example. And so again, that's in the philosophy of making it simpler for companies to launch, instead of you having to buy a dilution refrigerator that costs about $1 million. Essentially, we're buying it and we're renting it back to startups so that they don't have to raise all that capital to launch. And another piece of the puzzle is a quantum communication test bed that is also going to be available within the building, which is based on a already existing dark fiber network provided by Bell Canada for people to test their devices or their application on real life and a real life urban network, whether it be QKD, entanglement distribution, 5G, post-quantum cryptography, these types of application. We're going to have a suite of equipment from different manufacturers for people to play with. Rapidly, I wanted to talk about funding programs available for startups. So MyTax, I'm not going to say more on that because the experts are already in the room to answer any questions you have. There's the IRAP program that's available to all the companies around the country. But I want to focus a bit more on the program specific to quantum startups in Quebec. The first one is CED. So that's Canada Economic Development, which is part of ICED, serving SMEs in Quebec. They recently got $23 million specifically to support projects related to quantum SMEs in Quebec. So that's a very interesting source of funding. The other one that I wanted to highlight is MEIE, so Ministry of Economy, Innovation, and Energy in Quebec. So Quebec government has been in the past year supporting the quantum industry very, very strongly. That's one way that they're doing it. through a granting program specific to quantum startups. As you can see there, it's 150K grants that covers up to 50% of the cost for an R&D project. So that's a very interesting program for quantum companies. So this is what I had to say today. You have my contacts here. Feel free to contact me if you need more information.
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much, Chloe. So much are happening, and I'm sure a story is bigger than that, but you have only a limited time, I guess, and people can contact Chloe if you have more questions. And it's amazing that, Chloe and Martin, that you saw his photo as well. They're both physicists, and they do have background in quantum physics, and they worked for quantum startups for years, so they understand your language, your pain, and everything. There is a question for you in Q&A. I see. Is there Joanne asking? Is the quantum studio open to students from Waterloo IQC?
So the quantum studio is open to anyone who's interested, who fits the criteria. There was a question about what are the criteria. So it's not geography focused, even though it is located in Sherbrooke. So it is expected that you do come to Sherbrooke for at least a period of time. But the criteria are, any criteria that we had the question earlier, that what are the qualities that makes a good entrepreneur. So those are the things that we kind of evaluate. Same thing on the technology. Does the technology have a market that we think that can be commercialized and so on? But even, I said, even if you don't have a technology, please apply. We'll be interested to meet you. So don't hesitate to write to me if you want to learn more about that.
Great. Thanks, Chloe. And Leon is asking, where is this eSpace Quantique? That's
also in Sherbrooke.
Also in Sherbrooke. What are the eligibility requirements for Quantum Studio program?
Well, this is what I just said. Essentially, we're evaluating a bunch of criteria to make sure that you have what it takes to be an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm. So I guess the answer is just apply and do your best and hope for the best, right? And Iman is asking, can non-Canadians use your services? I assume, can they apply?
Absolutely. We're open to all.
Wonderful. That's a great news. When is the eSpace Quantique expected to be finished, especially the quantum communication testbed?
So the quantum communication testbed should actually be available at least partially starting this spring. And I would say Espace Quantique, the full opening will be fall 2023.
Fall 2023, so not that far from now. That's great news. Thank you. And Philip is asking, which tech stack is required by end user to access the eSpace Quantique 1 remotely? I'm not sure if I understand the question completely, but
me too. Can the person clarify the question, or just contact me directly if they want more information?
Feel free to unmute yourself and ask if that's possible. And yeah, Philip is asking for your email, if you can add that, Chloe, in the chat box in case you'd like to get in touch. Now we will have time at the end of this session for Q&A. So thank you very much, Chloe. We can move forward and listen from Jake, who runs the CDL QML at Rutland School of Business in Toronto. Personal, I guess, conflict of interest. I graduated from CDL many years ago, so I love that program. It's all yours, Jake. Take it away.
Great. And you guys can see my screen all right? Fantastic. Well, thanks again, Reza, for having me attend here. And Chloe, great stuff with the Quebec ecosystem. Really exciting to see it grow and mature. And I think what I'm going to tell you about today, for those who don't know about CDL, I think it would actually complement a lot of what Chloe was talking about. I think this is like a little bit of a different program. I wouldn't officially call it an incubator or an accelerator. It acts a little bit different, maybe a little bit complementary to some of the other incubator programs out there. So let me just tell you a little about why CDL exists and really what we're for here. So we started this about 12 years ago about why startups fail, and really about why it's harder to build startups outside of places like Silicon Valley. And if you were to map out the entire world and look at the topology of where there was a lot of deep tech investment, there'd be this mountain over Silicon Valley, right? And our hypothesis is that wasn't the lack of ideas, capital, or effort. I mean, we have all of those in all different parts of the world. So what was it about Silicon Valley that was allowing this to really take off and scale? And it really came down to this thought about it was a place, a network of people who had been there and done it before. People who had the local connections of people who have spun out of the lab, technology companies, people who knew their investor network close, and really had a strong sense of judgment of what it meant to build a high quality company. So part of CDL's mission was to not just keep this in Silicon Valley, but to bring this to other hubs in the world where that innovation was very sharp and growing, and we could open up the doors to that business judgment. So what we really do is we focus on seed stage companies that are science-based and help them become massively scalable. It's an objective setting program. So it's really, as a founder, there might be thousands of things you might want to focus on, whether it's on the product roadmap to how you're going to fundraise or how you're really going to get to your customer. And ultimately, it's about bringing together this shared room of experienced entrepreneurs, investors, and scientists to channel their insights and their network so that you can get there not only sooner, but in a much bigger way. So the way it's structured is it's over a 9-month term, typically actually over a year with the quantum program specifically. It's really built around these objective setting sessions. As you can see kind of in the layout of the room, you've got founders surrounded by a number of what we call fellows and associates. These are people who have had sometimes billion-dollar exits on their companies. These could be people who are entrepreneurs in the quantum space themselves. Around the room, we also have the scientists and the economists. These are scientists that people like Michele Mosca, who was a very big part of quantum cryptography growth and runs his own companies, for example, in the quantum space, really acting as a barrier of what can be done in this space and to act as a little bit of extra due diligence for the room. And a number of also corporate and technology partners, people who are investing in quantum technologies, people like Volkswagen or GM or BP, who really are like trying to find the next ways that they can either work with new emerging companies as customers or even invest in them directly. In the sessions themselves, what we have are the small group discussions. These are act as a number of breakout rooms that you're going to meet with, let's say 3 scientists, where you might discuss your product roadmap, some of the challenges and the fidelities of your qubits that you've been designing on your hardware or on your algorithm, if it's closer to the software side. And after you meet with a number of these rooms, almost like a speed dating with different mentors, you'll be sent off into the large room discussion. So instead of presenting your challenges and opportunities to these mentors, now in the large room discussions, one of the mentors will be introducing you to the room. You'll be more silent and listening as the mentors debate and discuss where they think the challenges and opportunities are and where they think you should focus over the next 8 weeks. This comes back to you to build a kind of a strong dynamic and a peer-reviewed format for you to kind of discover where these. So really, again, the core benefit here is this peer-reviewed advice of where to focus from people who've been there and done it before. Although we don't directly invest, so we are a non-for-profit, we're not taking equity or fees. You're keeping all of your IP. We're creating a marketplace, a place where many people are moving money, seeing where money is being moved, And all the time throughout, we see a lot of opportunities for funding emerge through the program. And then we ultimately have a triage process. So what happens is at the end of every session, we have the deliberations, the mentors leave the room, or the mentors leave the room, and the mentors then debate and discuss where they might want to raise their hand to spend additional time with the company. This is on their own, time, and this is really to help support, almost act as an unofficial advisor offline. And that's also getting one of those hands is your ticket to the next session, right? So by the end, we do have less companies graduating, but this is mainly so that we can really focus in on the companies that can get the most out of the program, and we can help grow and really even throughout that, we still find ways to support the companies if they aren't gotten a hand raise. Just thinking about all the kind of other things that we do here, this is actually around 12 sites now internationally. A lot of other spaces outside of quantum that we focus on, including AI, space, neurotechnology, and similar. So if you do have a kind of intersections there, really the rooms help with each focus areas like this. But really, I'm here to talk about the quantum room. Overall, we've had about $24 billion in equity value creation across these 12 sites and around 6,000 participating founders. As you can see here, just in terms of the education backgrounds, about 22% hold their PhDs, many 36 from masters, etc. And really a lot of the stages around the prototype stage. So if you're a student or a researcher right now that has developed prototypes in the lab, and you're like, hey, how do we take this from the lab and put it into market? This is basically one of the key areas that we're targeting. And I think you're in a great position typically to get a lot out of the program. So let's talk a little bit more about the quantum side. I know a lot of us are here for that. We started this about 6 years ago, right? And this was, since then we've helped about 140 ventures, coming through. This about a fifth of all the quantum companies on the planet have actually come through the program or been associated with us in some form. And since then, we've raised about 610 Canadian million. Xanadu, of course, which was coming through actually surprisingly with just a white paper at the stage that we're coming through, and now they've of course grown substantially. We've got a number of technology partners, Xanadu, IBM, Zapata, that actually help on different stages of the program to act as a more direct input of technology partner mentors to help guide the best ways to use and leverage their platforms, as well as opportunities to collaborate. So many of them have many opportunities where they've interacted with corporates and they're looking for startups that, or even researchers that have a lot of expertise in particular areas so that they can kind of, integrate their platform and integrate their connections into industry. We have a number of industry experts, people who have really been part of the quantum industry from its growth. We have people like Michael Helander, who was actually part of our first cohort, starting OTI Lumonics. He was a material science researcher from the University of Toronto, really was focused on OLED displays and design, and actually came through the program exploring where quantum could provide value for their materials discovery platform. After extensively trying machine learning and a number of robotics techniques to accelerate the process, they realized machine learning could only take it so far, right? They're working with data that doesn't exist for these new materials, and of course, the machine learning model is very dependent on that. So as they explored ways to run this on quantum hardware, use hybrid methods and even quantum-inspired techniques, they were able to find some great advancements. You can check out some of their papers on ways to leverage quantum for generating synthesized data for these new quantum materials, and actually simulating a lot of the dynamics and ground state energies to help inform where they should have as a starting point to produce them. And now they're selling to large manufacturers all over the world, particularly in Asia, and a lot of the the team's raised about 50 million now. Many people have joined, and they're based out of Toronto. So someone like this is in the room. They've gone through that journey of coming from the research and come and pushed it out. Other people are like John Martinis, who was part of the Google quantum supremacy claim many years ago, and now is actually doing his own startup in superconducting, helping out the room on a lot more on the hardware side, of course, but just to give you a sense. On the scientific expertise, we have Roger Malco as our kind of chief scientist in the room. He gets very involved with the companies very early in the boot camp, which I'll tell you a little bit about. And we also have many other kind of legends in the space, Barry Sanders, Michele Mosca, for example, who are really there to kind of work with the companies on a technical level to help with the roadmaps and to help you kind of take it to the next level. The bootcamp is something a little bit unique out of all the other CDL programs, and it's something that happens in the month of July. 2 times a week, you're coming in virtually for this one, and really it's a combination of technical and business training with some of the best practices we've seen in the quantum industry. These are many of the mentors that we mentioned here, as well as other stakeholder experts coming together to give you insights on how to build out your things like your resource estimation as a quantum company, both on the hardware and software side, how to take your benchmarks and really position them for a technical audience versus an investor audience or customers. Things around your economic value proposition as a quantum company. Why are you using quantum, and how are you going to integrate the actual reason to do that versus where you might get pushback, which a lot of companies may have. So, really this is a networking opportunity. There's many challenges, and it's all designed to complement what you're building as a precursor to the mentorship phase of the program, these sessions that I was alluding to earlier. So this is happening in July, and I'll tell you a little bit more about, if you are interested, how to get involved. Just talking a little bit about the cohort, what we're looking for, and I just wanted to share some trends as well, because I'm sure a lot of you are curious about what the heck is happening with the quantum companies that are doing well, what are kind of the target areas people are focusing on, a little bit of that distribution. And I like to think about it in the near term versus long-term categories. You have companies in the near term trying to bring value within the next 5 years. These are a lot of the NISC type quantum companies, as well as quantum sensing and things like this. So really, we have a number of companies that have come through that are in this kind of category. Some of them are positioned to also bring value later, but really like, how can we exist today and do this? The long-term companies are a little bit more on thinking about how to bring that, like, let's say, fault-tolerant future, maybe a couple years closer, or to really build the infrastructure and the components required to enable things like quantum communication and quantum computing as a whole. Just to get a sense of the ventures over the years, as was alluded to, we actually started as a quantum machine learning stream. So this was a really mix of a software optimization, and that was a big dominant part of the program for the first 2 years. We did open up the doors in the last 4 years to a hardware, particularly what we've seen a lot of interest in is enabling security and communication, sensing and computing hardware. And now we have a very even mix of these areas where about half our room is covered with this, and a lot of the mentors have been readjusted to help support with these technology spaces. Thinking about things like the cohort segments. So one of them, of course, is hardware, particularly on quantum sensors. Really, we look at this as lowering the cost of sensitivity, selectivity, and efficiency of real-world data acquisition. A lot of target areas like GPS, geological exploration, like mining, medical imaging, stuff like this. So we had actually a Quebec-based company, SP Quantum, come through many years ago, really doing NV diamond center-based sensing. And they actually did some really interesting work for submarine detection, which was a very big mandate of the defense economy. Like, how do we know if there's a foreign threat kind of in our waters? Very hard to detect. Whereas companies like a Quark were actually miniaturized vacuum technology, which were enabling quantum sensors, so that you could maybe stick a sensor that normally, like a cold atom sensor, on a drone. So now it could actually be able to do a lot more without having to, a lab the size of a truck to actually use that sensor. So really, we're looking past the lab stage, ready to work with customers, these types of technologies. On the optimization side, on the software, this is really lowering the cost of combinatorial optimization problems to be solved. People have applied these areas to finance, manufacturing, logistics, and energy. I would say a lot of these problems still require a lot of big scale, and they're going to require bigger and heftier quantum computers. But we are definitely getting closer and closer to using these solutions in both hybrid and in quantum-inspired ways to actually deal with these large data sets today, and actually build a roadmap so that we are in a very strong position to actually leverage fault-tolerant systems and very large-scale systems for NISQ algorithms, for example. So companies like Qubit Engineering here, we're actually able to do this for the placement of wind farms. So they're actually working with Siemens and things like this to find out where they could actually place these wind farms before they were built, so that you could actually get better energy efficiency and better design for that huge investment. Multiverse computing was a very interesting case where they actually found a huge set of breakthroughs on using tensor network methods, which were essentially a way to take traditional noisy intermediate scaled quantum algorithms and really shrink them down so that they were much lower gate depth, but much higher number of qubits. And by doing this, they were able to tackle larger scale problems in finance, doing a number of pilots with banks across Canada and the US and Europe, right? And they've really been a kind of a thought leader in the quantum finance space for this. So really, really strong team. On the quantum simulation side for software, this is really about materials discovery, enzyme design, drug discovery, environmental chemistry. We already talked about OTI, but companies like qu'une, really interesting because they were really focused on how do we build catalysts and kind of accelerate some of the work done on the pharmaceutical side, right? So really, really interesting to kind of see how these particular components are really hard to design, and can we leverage the kind of the lower cost of modeling this quantum scale to help support these industries, which has been very, very interesting to the pharmaceutical materials world. So, we've seen a number of these, and we're really still looking for that strong differentiation and domain expertise in order to sell into these areas as well. On the hardware, these are kind of more the full stack quantum computer companies. They're making the arrival of quantum a bit faster. Companies like Orca started as quantum memory, and now they're doing their full stack kind of quantum system. On the optics side, AQT, which had Peter Zoller and some of the founders of essentially ion trap technology, spinning out to finally build their own quantum ion trap system. So very exciting to have these types of companies really, really try to test their limits on the commercial side. And yeah, we're seeing a number of other quantum technologies, as you've probably seen on the silicon qubit side, the cold Rydberg atom side. Silicon qubits for a long time. The biggest challenge was that entanglement fidelity, that multi-qubit fidelity between multiple qubits, and now that's really starting to push their limits and be very, very good. And they're very attractive because they've got a great sense of economics of scale by piggybacking off the semiconductor industry. So some very interesting stuff there. Cold Rydberg atoms, fantastic emerging technology around the kind of scalable connectivity of these systems, very high quality of qubits, and really, I think as they develop better improvements on the control speeds, we're going to see them a lot more popular as an analog system. And of course, the many others that you guys have seen. And of course, we're very open to discussing if you have something on this space, a new qubit design, for example. The final category here, which is always a shock to me, but always very exciting. These are these enabling or unique application technologies. So this really opens up the scope of what we thought quantum could do. Companies like Focus, for example, they were using a kind of technique for quantum control and algorithmic cooling for kind of making it have reduced noise for qubits in an NMR space. They actually took this technology and applied it to NMR and MRI imaging. So with just a software update, they were already improving the quality of what an MRI and NMR could do. So instead of having a massive $400,000 machine, maybe it's only $200,000, maybe it's only $150,000 machine to get the same quality of resolution. So really different way of improving the imaging and control side. Companies like Xeros, for example, were actually thinking about entanglement in their communication systems as a way to synchronize timing systems. So by having a very high quality synchronized timing systems, they were looking at this for synchronized GPS, for improved GPS, which is a really big part of the applications that the world relies on today, but as well as things like a distributed data center. So imagine you have all of this data flowing in, but it has to be distributed amongst hundreds, if not thousands of different systems. If you have a very synchronized timing system, the throughput can be massively scaled up. So very interesting ways of using entanglement to actually bring value there, right? So, again, these are all some examples, but really where we've seen a lot of interesting technologies. And if you have ideas in these spaces or have already developed some prototypes in your labs, really interested in discussing, because a lot of these companies came just from that similar stage. So if you want to get in touch, I put my contact details there. We do have an application coming up on May 21st for our bootcamp in July. I do encourage you to even have a call or discuss if you're not sure, or if you're trying to figure out when the right stage would be to apply something like this. Again, I think it's very complementary to programs like Chloe was mentioning in the Quebec ecosystem, and actually MyTex, which you're going to learn a bit about from Reza here, where if you are a researcher or a student, there's some great opportunities to potentially even work with some of our companies or to come through at a different stage. So thanks again for listening. And if you have any questions at all, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Jake. Amazing. So many great stories. You know, we can have many sessions just hearing those stories. Companies like Xanadu, like Multiverse, great success stories. But yeah, that might be for another time. Thank you very much. I had a question, and I think one of our audience have a very similar question. So I'll ask you that. And you know, at what stage does the idea need to be for the CDL Quantum Boot Camp? And basically, you know, in general, what stage you mentioned, you know, Xanadu started with a white paper, and then some companies do have even MVPs, and they're more mature in that production stage. So tell us about those. Like, is there an ideal situation for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you about we do kind of look at a variety of that range. So some are on the later side, like maybe they've raised some money, they've got a bigger team, etc. On the other side of the coin, sometimes all it is a few founders, maybe a couple founders, and a really strong scientifically grounded idea. And we can kind of help support a lot of those things. We are looking for a little bit more in terms of if you've tested it as much as possible, or maybe you have some customers that are really interested. You know, some of these categories will really help your application, but it's a case-by-case basis. And I think we've had a lot of unique cases. We had one company actually get created through the bootcamp basically last year, and they did so well that they were actually doing quantum compression. So just really for the error mitigation and compression side, they targeted applications in finance. And now they've raised about 4 million just over the December to January period. So it was a really, really crazy success story because they were just so early in their journey, right? And I think it's an anomaly, but it's definitely possible. And I think it just matters on, you know, are you getting some of these ingredients business could be for those stakeholders? And maybe just and Jacob, I see your question there, and great to see you again. I know Jacob from in person. And I just want to comment on his question there around, you know, what background in business and entrepreneurship. Actually, so this really helped, right? So we're not expecting you to have much background in business and entrepreneurship. We really want you to be kind of coming more from the technology side, and I think that's where CDL brings a lot of value. We're really trying to support you know, the scientific founders with that side. And one of the things I didn't allude to, which I think is a really big support here that complements maybe if you do the MyTax to get some more research support on the science side. On the business side, we actually have a program with some of the top business students out of Rotman, and you know, typically in the MBA programs, and they actually get selected to be matched with your company if you get in the program to be a supporting force for the rest of the program. So you will actually get a business kind of almost like the equivalent of a part-time founder working with you to support your investment roadmap, your ways that you're targeting your sales, how to actually think about your finances, and these things that maybe seem a little bit more foreign at first until, you know, somebody's kind of on the ground with you working on it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jake. I'm going to ask the same question from you, Chloe. What stage is the ideal situation for you guys when you want to accept, you know, startups and founders in your ecosystem? Is there any?
So I'm just going to apologize first because I was having a problem with my camera. Some of you might have noticed that I switched device. So please let me know if you don't hear me properly. I can always try with my phone, but I'll keep going like that if that's fine for everyone. To answer your question, Reza, actually what we're building is we're trying to have this suite of solutions that address all the different stages. So for the Quantum Studio I mentioned, that's very, very early on. So as long as you don't need to have any requirement. just be interested in launching a company, and we'll take you through the first steps. The SSET incubator is a bit more advanced. We expect companies to be similar to what Jake said, past lab stage, more into how can we address commercialization. And then we even have resources more for scale-ups. At Espace Quantique, for example, they can have office space. We have some companies that have up to 30 employees, for example, renting enough office space in there. So we're really trying to address the whole spectrum of needs.
Great. That's a great news. Thank you so much. And, you know, for quantum, often I assume startups, you know, are basically just ideas, a background research, and that's how things start, right? Usually that's the case, I would say, for quantum science. Thank you very much, Chloe and Jake. Anuj, I see your hands up, and I'm sorry, it has been a while. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question, or? Okay.
If not, I can also comment on it. This is Abby's question.
Sure, please. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah. So for CDL, what's a good pathway for current graduate students to work towards their entrepreneurship goals? I think there's a number of ways, right? And we've seen it kind of as success stories. You know, one of the ways I think is to kind of see if there's people in your research group that would be willing to collaborate on this type of, you know, research or technology. Maybe it's your professor. I've seen many professor-student pairs actually come and spin this out. I've seen other, you know, fellows in the group work together to do it. But I think it's important to kind of test out some of these ideas, work with other teammates in your community, and see if this is something you want to pursue. Of course, there's always a big risk, but there's always this opportunity to kind of take it to the next level and bring it out into the world in new ways and commercialize. So I think as you have that, it's like, how can you find ways to de-risk the idea? And it might be ways of proving out the technology more. It might be ways of kind of connecting with people. Let's say you're selling into a particular industry. If they have insights about that industry, getting their feedback of, is this a big enough problem there to solve? And really, yeah, as you know, the three ingredients I always look for and we evaluate a lot on are the team, the product, and the market traction. You know, if you can think about those categories and ways to de-risk them as much as possible, you're already in a great position to go through programs like Chloe's and eventually programs like CDL.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jake. Okay. I see another question. What would be an example of a stochastic quantum system? I work on multi-qubit systems and I'm looking bad noise. I don't know if that question would be the best for this discussion, or we can answer it later, perhaps. And model. Okay. Now we are focusing on the quantum entrepreneurship and all the resources that are available in Canada for you. Yeah, okay. I'm trying to figure out how can I give you the unmute option. And until I figure that out, feel free to ask your questions in the chat box. Great. We do have more of those Slido questions for you. Perhaps we can use those as a little break, and you guys can vote, and we'll learn more about, you know, what you think. How about that, Kim? Can we bring those questions up? Get back to Slido. So this is one of the very, I think, as a ex-quantum entrepreneur, I would say one of the most fundamental questions, the first question that comes to mind when you are a grad student or just out of, you know, graduate school and you are thinking about starting a quantum startup, the concept of funding and those resources is, you know, perhaps the first one that comes to mind. And quantum is not cheap, right? Especially if you want to do something around hardware startups. So where, at least in Canada and in Canada's quantum ecosystem, where would you look for funding and for resources? Do you start with, I guess, VCs, or any other options, feel free to vote and we will see. And then we ask our expert panelists about what they think. Mm-hmm. We will give it like a minute, guys, before jumping on to next question. Government grants, interesting. We don't have anybody from the VC world on the panel, but maybe they are familiar enough to answer that. I'm not sure if at a very early stage that would be the best way or even feasible way.
So where I'm surprised is that the friends, family, and fools doesn't come up more. That's usually the first thing people turn to. Government is a good answer as well. Incubators, accelerators is interesting. I think these people can point you in the right direction to find the funding, but most incubators, accelerators don't have funds to invest in companies themselves. Some do, but I would say that's the exception.
But you guys are in the middle of that process, right? Would there be like funding available in future for your startups?
So in our case, we realized that was really lax, so that's why we raised a venture capital fund. But it's independent from the incubator. So it's not only for companies in at the asset incubator. It's for any company that fits the investment criteria. So it's that we'll be making our first investments very soon. We're just at the stage of launching the fund.
Yeah, maybe I can call in here a bit too. I absolutely agree with Chloe. I think incubators and accelerators aren't the direct funders, but I do think what they do is they consolidate that network of the opportunities and for you to understand how to access those opportunities a little bit easier. Government grants, I love that it's high here. I think non-dilutive funding is very key for this industry, especially. It can give you a lot of time to de-risk the technology and it adds a lot of credibility and some funds to get it started. Angel investors is pretty low. I think that one's, you'd be surprised, but I think a lot of it is about local angel investors. Like angel investors typically invest in their local ecosystems. And I think that's something that you might notice that might be great for those early first amounts of raise and just getting it off the ground, kind of complements the friend and family round. But I think the biggest thing here is that once you start that funding, as they say, once you get on the treadmill, basically you have to keep running on it with the dilutive funding, right? So if you can kind of delay that, and get a lot of those key pieces de-risked on your company, and then when you start to raise money, you've got kind of a good starting point. It makes it a lot easier to hit those increasing milestones that you're expected to hit from the investment community. So just something to keep in mind there. But I think the nature of this is that there's lots of places to look at for funding, and you really should. And the last one is the customer. The customer is the one that's going to fund you the most. They're going to be the one that actually de-risks it the most for everyone. So if they can pay you, you might not even need a lot of this investment, right? Something in the customer's hands where you can get paid is actually going to be the ultimate funding opportunity for your business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if that's what the person who wrote none of those had in mind or not. If not, I'd be interested to hear what you think, whoever wrote that.
Yes, please add those in the comments, and we'd love to hear what you think, what would be none of the above. I'm sure there's always creative ways of finding resources for your startup. Can you guys actually expand a little bit on the concept of non-dilutive and dilutive? Let's say if I'm a physics student and I have no clue what's non-dilutive.
You want to go, Jake, or should I go?
You can go for it, Chloe.
All right. So when we talk about non-dilutive funding, actually, I'm going to start by dilutive funding. I think it's going to be simpler. So when you have a company, you own a certain percentage of that company. So day one, usually if you're two founders, the two of you might share the company and you each own 50% of the company, for example. So investors, by investors, I mean venture capital, angel investors, and funds. When they invest in a company, that's usually in exchange for shares in the company. So day one, you own 100%, but then if an investor writes you a check, then you might own only 80% of the company and the investor owns the other 20%. So that's what we call dilutive, because it dilutes your ownership of the company. Non-dilutive funding is everything that does not dilute your equity. So that's mostly government grants, sales, we mentioned before, sales from customers, and prizes. For example, if you go to a competition, pitch competition, things like that, that's another way to get money that is not diluting your shares in the company.
Great. Jake, do you want to add anything to that? And also tell me, do you even recommend those pitch competitions, let's say for quantum startups? What do you think about that?
I have nothing to add. I think Chloe did a great job explaining it. For pitch competitions, I think the way I look at it is it's almost like diversifying your risk. You want to look at different windows and opportunities to attract and raise funds. So if there's certain pitch competitions that are especially focused on quantum or focused maybe on the target market that you're looking at, like let's say it's the mining industry and there's a pitch competition for the mining industry, I think those can be very useful as well. But it also depends on the stage you're at, right? Like if you're at the stage where you're just de-risking the technology and trying to test it out, I think it makes a lot of sense that you look at, these government grants are going to be very targeted to that, or even other non-dilutive program grants that are not government, but kind of closely linked to that space. So take a look there, and sometimes it's even, you can kind of do it in a way that's collaborative with your research already, right? Like your research group and your project might have a certain amount of funding, and you could probably put some of that towards what you're building. Just keep in mind, depending on what university you're at, there is a process of negotiating the IP, of spinning that out into your own company, and that's a very big part of that journey. But really, that's something you do to work with your commercialization offices, and I think coming through programs like mentioned today can support some of the strategy of how you can navigate. Yeah.
Very important points. Thank you so much, Jake. And yes, the concept of IP, how to bring that out of your research and academia. We will have actually our next webinar. That's the topic of our next webinar. It's all about IP. And very soon it will be announced, and especially with the spin about quantum technologies and how to deal with that, since it's kind of a newer technology, and how you can leverage your research and your academic basically setting to start or to jumpstart your quantum company. What I was going to suggest is people always look into these government grants as non-dilutive resources. They are great. Canada has very good programs that can support you and help you. I know, for example, BDC Deep Tech Fund, and then there are several VCs in Canada that are very much focused on quantum technologies. Other government programs like IRAP, like NRC, those challenge programs. There's that quantum sensing challenge that has been going on for a while, and now there's the quantum computing challenge program by NRC. And of course, there's MITAX funding, and which I will tell you about very soon. So that's always something to look into when you are looking for funding, since VC money might not be easy, at least at the earliest stage. Incubators and accelerators, as Chloe and Jake mentioned, they usually don't have funding unless, you know, you get to YC or something like that, that they do have funding available. They have lots of other support to offer, but perhaps not funding. And then, you know, there are still other ways to share, let's say, resources, especially for quantum hardware companies and startups. Okay, thank you very much, guys. Do you wanna, Kim, go to the next question? Okay, this one is a very easy one. How familiar are you with the MyTax and its programs? I guess that's for me. No answers, not at all. Okay. Somewhat familiar. Oh, that's amazing. Lots of people already worked with MyTax, so this is great. And I will soon tell you a little bit more about MyTax. Well versed. Fantastic. You made my job very easy, so I can skip most of my slides, I guess. Thank you. Thanks, Kim. Now, I guess my turn, guys, if you allow me. I will share my screen and I will go to presenter mode. So sorry about that. Okay, can you see my screen now? Wonderful. Okay, thank you very much, guys, for joining us today. This was great. If I could figure out now, I'm going to talk, you know, in general, MyTax is sector agnostic, discipline agnostic. We support research and innovation across Canada, and we do have lots of international collaboration. But of course, for this talk, we're going to talk mostly about the quantum side of everything. MyTax is a part of Canada's national quantum strategy, which recently was announced. This is a photo of that announcement. You know, everybody's smiling. That's great. Two of my colleagues attended that event in, I believe it was in Perimeter Institute or IQC. I haven't had the chance, but we are receiving $40 million out of that $360 million government announcement for quantum. MyTax will deliver 40 million to support, you know, attraction, training, and retention. So our part is the HQP, the highly qualified personnel, and we will do our best to support quantum workforce development across Canada. Now, in 2019 to 20, the government of Canada supported talent mobilization in quantum sector with more than $3 million in MyTax internships. So this is what we have done before, and that $40 million is what we are going to do. So there are funding resources available. Please come talk to us. We are more than happy to talk. MyTax quantum partners, we are working with almost every quantum startup in Canada when I was looking last time, but you know, these are the notable players. 1QBit, it's a very interesting story how they are working with MyTax from the very early stage. Xanadu, D-Wave, SP Quantum, Multiverse. Basically, we are working with almost all these quantum startups, and on the general ecosystem we work with, we have agreements in place with main research centers that are focused on quantum, including Waterloo Region, Perimeter, University of Toronto, Quantum City in Calgary, University of Sherbrooke. We have an agreement in place with NextQT at University of Ottawa, the Nexus for Quantum Technologies. So we can, if you are a startup founder, if you want to work with any of these ecosystems, we are more than happy to connect you with. We do have agreements in place. Here's a little bit about the map of quantum across Canada. As you can see, the Institute for Quantique, Anion, Pink, on the east side, and North Quantique, notable players. coming to Creative Destruction Lab in Toronto, Xanadu, of course, in Toronto, and then the Quantum Valley with lots of great quantum research happening, and commercialization these days. The Institute for Quantum Computing at University of Waterloo, Perimeter. There is a TQT program, of course, going on there, the Transformative Quantum Technologies. Coming kind of to the middle, University of Calgary, Quantum Alberta, 0 Point Cryogenics, which we recently started collaborating with, a great example of Canadian quantum success. D-Wave, and then 1QBit Quantum Algorithm Institute and Quantum BC on the West Coast. So we are working with all of them. I'm gonna be as quick as possible since we don't have much time and I have lots of slides. But one of the very interesting success stories when it comes to quantum collaboration between MITEX and companies is 1QBit. MITEX supported over 55 interns with quantum computing company 1QBit. 1QBit means the MITEX award. I don't remember when was it, but I believe their CEO Andrew is coming to MITEX podcast. You can hear their stories soon. Supporting Canada's quantum tech. Another very interesting story is D-Wave, that we have been working with them from very early stage for years and years. A bold roadmap to transformational change. What we are planning to do is strengthening Canada's innovation ecosystem, advancing the continuum of innovation, deploying bright minds for a better future, driving and empowering organization for excellence. Why MITEX? Because we have been around for more than 23 years now, more than $1 billion investment in innovation research since 2010. We have more than 100 advisors embedded in Canadian post-secondary institutions, from colleges to universities. Everywhere you will find a MITEX advisor that are more than willing to help, very much willing to help and support, your research and innovation projects. We have something around 12,000 private sector and non-for-profit partners since 2008, 189 post-secondary partners in Canada, basically from coast to coast to coast. Even in Yukon, we do have MITEX representation, funding agreements with international partners from 25 countries in European Union. That number is growing, I would say, month by month, so we can help you connect with even other countries and do have more international collaboration when it comes to quantum technologies. I'm going to jump on this, but what are the benefits to partner organization? What can we bring to the table? Well, our MOU model allows organizations to plan ahead with limited risk, can use pre-approved MITEX leveraging to make fundraising asked or planned within their budget, aligning research needs to their highest priority. I'm going to share actually these presentations with all of you, so no worries. I'm not going to go through all of these, but as you can see, there are many ways that MITEX can help your organization. So if you're curious to come and talk to us. Who can apply? Companies, for-profit organizations, non-for-profit organizations, municipalities, and hospitals. Now, in this case, when we are talking about quantum, I would assume it's mostly companies and for-profits or non-for-profits. For example, like Primitive, educational non-for-profits, economic development, community engagement, art galleries, companies, counseling centers, private schools, educational companies. They're all eligible who can apply for MITEX funding. Eligible applications, interns can be college students all the way to postdocs, and the internship units are different. Profs from universities and colleges, and partners can be industries, non-for-profit, and as I said, crown corporations, municipalities, and hospitals. In every deal that we have, there's always a prof and a partner and an intern. The three should play together. That's how MITEX programs are usually That's how it works. I'm not going to go through all of this, but you can see we are working with basically many universities, with government partners, private sector and industries. More than 12,000 partners supported so far during all these years, something around 10,000 small and medium-sized businesses. We help a student entrepreneur ventures. I'm sure you would like to hear more about that since we are talking about entrepreneurship. If you incorporate your company, a student on a project as a co-founder or stakeholder, we can support you to work with a faculty and basically leverage their expertise. And then a student founder can be a MyTax intern at the same time. Interns should spend 25% of their time at the incubator instead of an external partner. So you can be the founder and at the same time the intern that works for your own company, right? I think that's a great plan for students who are interested to start their own companies. We help you connect with universities abroad. If you are interested, you are a faculty at a Canadian university and a faculty at an international, we do have programs that you can exchange students. If I have time, I will talk about those. So we do have programs that can support this talent mobilization, collaborative research programs. This is the part of what we do. Projects are built. It can be as small, as short as 4 to 6 months. And you can build, you can basically stack these modules as many as you need. For a multi-year project with multi-universities, for example, a project can have as many modules as needed. So that's up to you. The intern should spend a minimum of 25% of their time at each site, post-secondary institution and the partner organization. So the concept here is to help students or intern to gain basically both side, experience, right? Industry and academia. Our funding model, 50% of the investment comes from the partner organization and the other 50% will be matched by MyTax. So each internship unit that we taught can be 10K or 15K. Half of it comes from your let's say startup and the other half comes from MyTax, entire money. The flow, I will have here it is, MyTax invoices the external partner and MyTax doubles that and the whole money goes to the faculty and that funding can be used to support the intern, right? To do the R&D work for your company, which, it can be yourself if you are the founder. So this internship unit, as I mentioned, you can stack as many as you need. Partner organization and PIs can have as many units as needed. So let's talk about our main program, which are stated in that quantum collaboration agreement: accelerate, elevate, business strategy internship for PSI and global link. These are the 4 flagship, let's say, programs that MyTax offers, and I'm very quickly going to go through them. So you have a general idea. MyTax Accelerate is basically the bread and butter of what we do. It's good for applied research collaborations with external partners. Applications are accepted at any time and not competitive. The acceptance rate is very high. International collaborations are possible between international companies and Canadian-based research centers and post-secondary institutes. That's even possible. The other flavor of this is you can have a joint MyTax acceleration with other funding resources such as Insert Alliance. In this case, as you can see, the industry partners apply this 30K per year, and then MyTax match it with another 30K, and then 60K will be available. And the Insert will provide another 30K. So overall, 90K will be available to that for the PI to be spent on the intern's salary stipend, right? That's another flavor of it. MyTax Elevate is very much funding model is the same, it's 50-50, but in this case, it's a 2-year collaboration for postdoc researchers. So postdocs can apply for Elevate. It comes with professional training and then applications selected via competition. So there are twice a year. Now for quantum, it might be different, we will see. But the funding is more than accelerate. So, and it's a little bit more competitive. Global Link Research Award, that's between two universities. Students can go from one institute to the other. 6K research grant, and it works for impact and outbound, of course. It works both ways. My tax business strategy internship, BSI. So actually it is mostly focusing on the research. This one is mostly focusing on innovation projects. So you can hire interns to do innovative projects. Applications are accepted anytime, very much similar to Accelerate, and students apply their technical expertise to solve business challenges. But that's another program that you can take advantage of to grow your business. Markex Entrepreneur International. This is another interesting offer that can help founders, especially quantum founders, when budgets are tight. It's a travel grant up to 5K to go visit, international events, and you just need to have international markets, and there are usually incubators involved. So why you should work MyTax? What is our quantum strategy? Amplifying the benefits of R&D investment, supporting emerging technology to bring Canada's diverse talents. That's what we are going to do. We are cultivating diverse innovation ecosystem, fostering quantum talent, and proactively pursuing and matching quantum startups businesses with academic and research groups and centers. This is our plan for the next 6 years. We are going to support something around 5,000 quantum internship units. And that's how the breakdowns are per year. What we're hoping to see that Canada's quantum technology is expanding and growing fast in the next few years. And the number of these internship units are growing fast. So with that, I don't know if you have time for these questions. I don't think so, but I'm gonna stop with thanking our partners and funding partners and get back to you and spend a few minutes answering your questions. Please feel free to reach out. We are always here and happy to help and support. Now you have our contact information. Okay. MyTax event registration is open April 13. Okay, that's great. So our next event, our Marcom team is telling me that the registration is open. That's great. Any more questions from our attendees, from our great speakers about MyTax programs? I don't know. But I will share with you this presentation. Okay, either I was so good or I was so fast that now I don't see, or you were well versed to begin with on MyTax programs. We are almost on time. Thank you very, very much for joining us today. Where can we access the recording of this event? The recording will be available. I will send you the link on MyTax YouTube channel. I will send you the link with this presentation with my co-founders. I will be more than happy to share with you. Thank you very much, Bernard. We will have, the next event will be focusing on quantum IP, everything that comes to IP, and then how to start companies with tech transfer offices, how to deal with that, and where are all the government resources available to support, your intellectual property, I guess, support. Great presentation. Thank you very much, Bradley. We are almost on time. Do you guys have any last comments, anything for us, Jake, Chloe, before we say goodbye?
Well, I just want to say thank you to everyone to staying with us this whole time. And we have very exciting times in front of us in quantum. So if you guys are interested, I guess you are interested in quantum if you attended this webinar. And I can tell you there are lots of job opportunities in the field. We didn't talk much about talent, but we need more people, like I'm sure the smart people that we have in the room today, to join the field. Looking forward to seeing you guys in the future.
Yeah, thanks again, everyone, and really appreciate the time here, Reza and Chloe. I think great job sharing some of the opportunities and where the pathways are going for this industry. And just for the audience, as somebody who kind of came from the science and the quantum side and at Waterloo and was very, very interested in that, one of the best decisions I made was exploring this from the entrepreneurial angle and seeing how those worlds could be more bridged. And I think it's closer than it's ever been. It's a really exciting time for the science and commercialization of this industry starting to really materialize. So please reach out to all of us, hopefully, all these speakers, and just to learn more, a little bit more, and how you can benefit from each of these programs. And yeah, great to be here.
Thank you very much, Jake. Thanks, Chloe. Thank you, all of you guys, for joining us today. This was great, and we will be in touch. There will be more quantum events coming from MyTax, and exactly as Jake said, the road ahead is very exciting. It's very bright. Canada continues to lead the way in quantum technologies, and more innovation, very exciting innovation coming from Canadian quantum research centers and companies. Thank you and stay safe. See you next time.